Hello everyone, welcome to yet another session of the Daily News Analysis by Shriram's IAS, where we take up the important articles featuring in the Hindu newspaper and break them down for our understanding from the UPSC examination point of view. So let's start our today's discussion by taking the important articles from the newspaper which appear on our screen. Now the first article which is important for the day, which reads, Expedite classification of the nomadic tribes in quota lists panel tells center. Now, why is this article appearing into the newspaper? This article appears in the newspaper in the context of the denotified nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. Yes, these tribes are of much importance for us, and it is with respect to these tribes and the schemes and the welfare measures for these tribes are being discussed, and they were discussed in the parliament, and the panel for social justice, the parliamentary panel for social justice and empowerment actually pulled up the center on its execution of the efforts for these denotified nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. So through this article, we'll understand what are these denotified semi-nomadic and nomadic tribes, what is their composition, what is the population in India, what is the scheme that is there for their benefit, and what are the estimations of their population. So we'll take a look at all of that from the examination perspective. So first, let's understand who are these denotified nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. These tribes even fall in the lower rung when we calculate the scheduled tribes or scheduled caste communities. These communities that are most vulnerable and deprived. So they fall even below the rung of the scheduled tribe communities, because these are extremely deprived communities. So these DNTs or denotified tribes are communities that were notified as being born criminals during the time of British. This was under the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871. That's the level of operation they come from, and these acts were repealed then in the time of independence in 1952, and these communities were then classified as denotified, that there was no history for them, and they were put under the denotified category. And a few of these communities which were listed as denotified were also nomadic communities. Now what are nomadic or semi-nomadic communities? These are those tribal communities or communities of people who are not fixated at one place, whose place of habitation is not fixed. They continuously move from one place to another. It can either be pastoral communities or those communities which trade from one region to another. All of these fit into nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. So all of these tribes came to be known as one category under the denotified, so nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. So this is their composition, and historically these nomadic tribes and denotified tribes never had access to private land or home ownership, again because they were nomadic. And while most DNTs are spread across the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and other backward categories, some DNTs are not covered in any of these categories. So the problem with them is that certain DNTs are counted under some scheduled caste, scheduled tribe list, and others are not yet categorized. So this is the context of today's article, where the parliamentary panel actually pulled up center and asked it to fasten up its work on categorizing these denotified tribes into the relevant scheduled caste, scheduled tribes or OBC categories. So this is the context of the article. Now, if we talk about the population of the semi-nomadic denotified tribes in the whole South Asia, it is said that these communities are have their most population. The world's largest nomadic population exists in South Asia, and in India, roughly 10% of the population is denotified and nomadic. This is a significant number, and the population of nomadic tribes consists of about 500 different communities. It is from these communities where either they are notified under any list or they are not notified. The center first has to notify these tribes in either of the three lists, and only then these tribes could try to avail any benefit under the schemes that are there for them. So there have been various commissions from the time of independence which have tried to take a stock of their situation, what their population is. So when we come to know that they are 10% of India's population, it is the commission's work which has given us this data. So these commissions have also performed their functions. Let's look at the major commissions which have worked for the denotified tribes. So the first one is the National Commission for Denotified Nomadic and Semi-Nomadic Tribes, which was constituted in the year 2006 by the government then. It was headed by Balkrishna Sidaram Renke and submitted its report in 2008. this commission held that it is an irony that these tribes somehow escape the attention of our constitution makers, because the constitution makers, as we all know, the constitution has provisions for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. But what about those tribes which were even more deprived than them? So the constitution could not have provisions for these communities, and that is a sad part. They're deprived of the constitutional support, unlike the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. So this is the commission which estimated their population at around 10 crores based on the census of 2001. So this was the work done by National Commission for Denotified Nomadic and Semi-Nomadic Tribes. Then an important commission is the IDATE Commission. This was the national commission constituted in 2015 under the chairmanship of Shri Bhiku Ramji Idate. This commission was tasked to identify and properly list the DNT communities in different states to evaluate the progress of development of these communities in the states. And based on the recommendation of this commission, the Government of India set up the Development and Welfare Board for DNTs, SNTs and NTs in 2019. This is a major body which works for the welfare of the denotified tribes now. Now, this was the work of the commission. Now let's come to the scheme which the article talks about, which is there for the welfare of these communities. And since the categorization of the denotified tribes is not properly happening by the is not properly done by the central authorities, the execution of the scheme is becoming a problem. So what is the SEED scheme? The SEED, or which stands for Scheme for Economic Empowerment or of Denotified Nomadic and Semi-Nomadic Tribes, or the SEED communities. It was launched in the year February 2022 by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. So the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment launched a specific scheme in order to help the community members of these denotified nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. So what is this scheme aiming to do? It aims to provide free competitive exam coaching to these students, to provide health insurance to the families, to uplift clusters of these communities through livelihood initiatives, and to provide financial assistance for housing. Therefore, its components has free coaching, health insurance, livelihoods and housing through the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. These are the initiatives which the scheme intends to undertake with respect to the upliftment of these tribes. So, if we talk about the features of this scheme, a total outlay of rupees 200 crore has been given under the scheme to be spent over the next 5 years. And this development board which we talked about, which was set up on the recommendation of the IDATE Commission, has been tasked with the implementation of this scheme. And an online portal has been developed by the department which will ensure seamless registration and will also act as a repository of data on these communities. And it is this online portal from which the evidence has been taken to analyze the performance of the scheme so far, where it has seen that only 5,400 applications have been received under the scheme up until the December of this month, none of which have been approved and no amount has been sanctioned for these communities. So this is the status of the performance of the scheme so far, and that is why the parliamentary panel has pulled up the government on its slow process to categorize over 260 of the DNT tribes into either of the three lists. So what does this mean is that because these tribes have not fallen under the radar of the government data or identification, they are not able to avail the benefit of the scheme that is meant for them. So what is required is that their notification or their identification in either of the three lists happens quickly, so that they can avail the benefit of these welfare schemes which are there for them. So this is a discussion with respect to the SEED scheme and the denotified nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. With this, we finish this article and let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article, which reads Unfunded Pension Scheme is a Tax on Future Generations, says Sanyal. So now, this article appears in the newspaper in the context of, again, the discussion of old pension scheme versus the national pension scheme. And a fresh perspective has been added by none other than the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister member, Sanjeev Sanyal, right? So he's an authority with respect to these things, and he has commented on the OPS, saying that unfunded pension schemes are ultimately a tax on future generations. So we've already conducted a detailed discussion on the old pension scheme versus national pension scheme. How do they compare with each other? What are the drawbacks of all schemes, and what can be done to resolve this debate? You can access this via the DNA of 26/11/2022 and refer to the discussion over here. So with this, we finish today's discussion, and we'll meet again tomorrow to take up the important articles from the newspaper. Thank you.